Okay, so in the last few weeks, we spoke about Adam and Eve in the garden, the fall, sin, death entering into the world. You see the rise and the destruction of humanity, how humanity basically sins all the way in their heart. So God cleanses the land of all of the people through the story of Noah and his ark, and then he comes off of the ark. He is going to pray. He's going to set up an altar. He's going to offer a sacrifice unto God on the altar. And then he also has three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Jesus is going to come from the line of Shem. The Shem is the father of all of the Shemites, which will later be known as the Semites. These are the people that are geographically going to uh, live in the region of in the Middle Eastern region, really functionally. That encompasses the Canaanites, it encompasses the Amorites, it encompasses the Hittites, it encompasses the Hebrews, it encompasses the Ishmaelites, it encompasses the Israelites. These are all sons of Shem. So the Shemites are in this region, but they're all the people of the world, so to speak. The world's been cleansed, are still speaking one language. So they decide that they are going to be like God, and they're going to reach the heavens. If they can just reach the heavens, then they can be like God. So they start building a tower, and that tower is found in Babel or Babylon. Eventually, it's called the Tower of Babel. And what happens is God, realizing their plan, confuses their tongues, and this is going to play out later in this story arc on the day of Pentecost, and I'll come back to that at that point. But uh, but basically, the Tower of Babel falls because all of their tongues, and they can no longer talk to one another, so they end up scattering all throughout the world. And of that line, that progression, that line is a man named Abram, or also known as Abraham. He receives a new name, Abraham, later. I'm just going to call him Abraham from here forward. Abraham is a man of great faith. He believes in God. He's living in Ur, in Chaldea, so he's basically in Iraq, and he is called out of Iraq so that he can come to the promised land, a land that God promises to his seed forever. And this Abraham takes by great faith, leaves, even though he's very wealthy, he's got everything established, he doesn't need to go, he's old man already even. He leaves with his family, he picks up and leaves Ur, and he goes into what's now modern day Jerusalem. That's functionally where he goes, and because he was led by God to go there. So he ends up there, and there are already people there, which might surprise most of us, but there are already people there in Jerusalem. Um, there's a man there, in fact, who was a high priest. His name was Melchizedek. So Abraham comes to Jerusalem. He has to fight some battle. He ends up making peace with the king of Salem. Okay, and his name is Melchizedek. This guy, the king of Salem, is a very important figure in Orthodox Christianity because he takes a tithe, 10% of everything that Abraham has to offer to him. He also offers to Abraham bread and wine, and that is a type of the body and blood of Jesus Christ. So he is known as the priest of the Most High, and he really comes from nowhere. He has no origin story. and he kind of just disappears. He has no story of his death. He's just there. He's existing. So he's a really fascinating type of Christ. And later in the book of in the book of Hebrews, Paul is going to talk about Melchizedek, and he's going to say, "Thou art a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek," and he's going to tell us that we have a high priest, and that high priest is Jesus Christ. So, so Melchizedek is a very important figure in this whole story, and Abraham offers him a tenth of all that he has, which is the first time that we now the second time rather that we see giving of a tenth, a tithe of all that we have unto the Lord. So we've seen it with Abel, we saw it with Cain, and now we see it with Abraham. So Abraham is going to go into this promised land. He's going to go by faith. He's going to come into it. He's going to have some trouble. And one of the things that happens to him is he has a nephew whose name is Lot. Lot is going to get himself kind of captured. So Abraham is going to take with him 318 foot soldiers, so to speak, to release Lot from this capture. And when he does that, the church is going to remember this number. This number is a very significant number to the church, because in the what's known as the First Ecumenical Council, you're going to have 318 bishops, if you will, foot soldiers of God, who are going to fight a battle against I guess Arianism at the time, and they're gonna basically hash it out. So this concept, this battle, is a prefigurement of the First Ecumenical Council, and Abraham, of course, just like the church fathers, they're gonna win. They're gonna win this battle. And then establish peace with the king of Salem, for the sacrifice, and then that'll be good for him. So Abraham is going to establish himself in this region. He's going to buy some property. He's got a lot of cattle. He's doing really well for himself. Everything is good. The only problem that he has is he doesn't have a son. So when God spoke to him already in his old age and made him leave Chaldea, he's kind of like, hey, where do I go? I'll go, no problem, but how am I going to have offspring that are going to number the stars, as was the promise that God had given him? And how is his seed going to inherit the land? Like, if he doesn't have a son, how will he be able to inherit everything? So it's an interesting question. He believes God's promises. His wife doesn't necessarily believe God's promises, but he believes God's promises. So he's going to have an interesting conversation with his wife, and his wife is going to say, hey, look, I know you're supposed to have a son. I'm old in my age, so I can't give you a son, realistically. So why don't you go into my my handmaiden, Hagar? And so Abram, I guess, reluctantly, or maybe not unreluctantly, goes into Hagar and has a son by her. He gets her pregnant. She has a kid. His name is Ishmael. So the firstborn son of Abraham is Ishmael. And this is a very important person in the modern day, and in what will later become known as the Abrahamic religions. So you have Abraham, You have Ishmael, who was the son of Hagar. Hagar is not a legitimate wife of Abraham, and so I don't know that Sarah really wants her to be around. She kind of gets jealous of her, especially after something else happens, which is uh, what is taking place around the same time of something else going on in another part of the same region. But if you go a little bit south of Jerusalem, there's an area there that is called Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot ends up going over there into Sodom and Gomorrah, and um, he finds a lot of unwholesome things taking place there. Now, God is going to come down, and he is going to tell Abraham that he is going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. So Abraham receives God. He receives God at the Oak of Mamre, and he has, if you will, an altar there, a table, and there's a very famous image by Andrei Rublev that shows the Holy Trinity. So there's three angels that appear, and Andrei Rublev kind of depicts this image it's famously known as the hospitality of Abraham. And when you look at this image, you see like a cup. You see like a cup, and Jesus Christ is in the center of the cup. So that's the body and blood of Jesus Christ. And then he's flanked by two angels. One represents the Holy Spirit, one represents God the Father. All three of them have the same face. Really interesting depiction of the Holy Trinity. And this is understood in scripturally that when Abraham received these three angels, he received the Holy Trinity, is the understanding there. And the angels, which are speaking to him, biblically speaking to him now, saying, hey, we're going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And the reason for it is there's the unrighteousness is unbearable there. And they were committing acts of sodomy. That's where you get that term from. Is from this particular place in the world. So, a lot of people can spend a lot of time talking about the action, that particular action, and really beat people up about that. What the Orthodox Church, or what I tend to do rather, I don't know if it's the Orthodox Church in general, what's really important for us to recognize is that Abraham is sitting there negotiating with God. And he ends up saying to God, hey, Lord, if you find 50 people that are righteous in Sodom, will you spare the city? And God says, if I find 50 people there, I will spare the city that are righteous. Okay, well, if you find 40, certainly you wouldn't destroy the city on the account of the other 10. If you find 40 there righteous, would you spare the city? And the Lord says, yeah, if I find 40, I'll spare the city. And well, on the count of 10, he certainly wouldn't destroy. So he keeps going down like by 10. And then he ends up getting down to like 10. 10 people. If you find 10 people, Lord, in this city, certainly you wouldn't destroy. And what Abraham does when he does this is he shows us that our function in life is to negotiate with God, is to use prayer, supplication, talk to God, and negotiate a better deal for our brothers and sisters, wherever we find them in the world, for God to show mercy upon us. You can focus on the sin all you want, that's fine. But I don't know that it is fine, because what we need to be doing is focusing on the supplication and to focus on negotiation with God. We have to pray to Him. Abraham gives us a type of prayer by negotiating with God a fairer deal. Anyways, God cannot find 10 people that are righteous in that part of the world, in Sodom and Gomorrah. He can't find 10. Well, Abraham knows that his nephew Lot is there. He's already saved him once. So he's like, well, can you at least get my son, my nephew out of there? Lot, can you get him out of there? And so what happens is God allows that to happen. The angels go over there. They tell the people are so bad, they're actually trying to get the angels to do evil things with them. So what happens is he gets Lot out of there with his daughters, and they go on to, with his wife, they go on to the Dead Sea. They get in a boat, and they're given very specific instructions. Do not turn back. Do not look back. Do not look back. Okay? Because there's a grave consequence. So fire started to come down from heaven after Abraham negotiated down basically to get Lot out of there and spare his life and his family. God negotiated to get them out of there, or Abraham negotiated with God to get them out of there. He gets them out of there, but they have one specific instruction that they were clearly told: do not look back. And so one of them looks back, and that is Lot's wife. She looks back. She becomes a pillar of salt, a pillar of salt. Now, if you know anything about the Dead Sea, and we'll keep coming back to this, it's a salt sea. It's actually the lowest point on earth, and it's so salty that you float in it. Okay? You float in it. It's kind of an amazing part of the world. So they leave Sodom and Gomorrah. She looks back. She turns into a salt pillar. And basically the whole of the sea is so salty that it can't produce or sustain life. Okay, you can't live there. So there's no animals that live there. They will die. So that's why it's called the Dead Sea. So Lot gets out of there safely with his daughters. Then his daughters do some weird stuff with him, and like basically say, hey, we might be the only ones left in the world. So I think they get pregnant by him, something weird that happens there. So it's like they don't necessarily learn their lesson. He gets mad about that. Abraham, meanwhile, has around the same time is hosting the triune Godhead. So one of the angels stays back and talks to Sarah and tells her that she's going to be pregnant. So she kind of hears that, and she laughs. And the reason she laughs is because she's old. So how can an old woman have a child? Okay, and so in saying that, in the laughter, she names her son Isaac, which means laughter. And in Arabic, it's idhak. It means to laugh. So, like you're laughing, So you hear it even in the Arabic, which is a very Semitic language again. All right, so she laughs. She has a son. His name is Isaac. And Abraham, you see the promise of God to Abraham is going to be fulfilled through his son Isaac, or so he thinks. Now, remember, he has another son. His name is Ishmael. So now that there's two sons competing for all the wealth, Sarah is now really jealous of Hagar and her son Ishmael. So she makes Abraham to get rid of her. And he doesn't kill her, he just sends her off. And God comes and tells Hagar, hey, a great nation will come out of your son. Don't worry about it. You'll be taken care of, you'll be provided for, so on and so forth. Everything's going to work out just fine. You're going to be all right. And that great nation, as most people, most scholars would agree, is the Muslim people, the Arabs, the Arab tribe, so to speak, which are now functionally the Muslims, which come way later in time. But the Arabs are going to be their father is going to be Ishmael. So they're always going to make this argument. They're always going to make this argument about Ishmael being the promised son of Abraham, and the Hebrews or the Israelites or whoever are going to say no, it was Isaac. They're always going to have this contention. They're really functionally cousins, or that are fighting with each other. One is an adherer of a follower that Isaac is the one who is the legitimate heir, and the other one's going to argue that no, Ishmael is the legitimate heir. Our Orthodox Christian ethos is going to say that Isaac is the legitimate heir. Okay, that's very very important for this story. The whole flip of that, the inversion of that to Ishmael, doesn't come until Islam kind of rises, which is a 6th, 7th century phenomenon. Okay, so the understanding is it's Abraham who has a son named Isaac, and this son named Isaac is the one that is going to be taken up the mountain to be sacrificed. Okay? Abraham is going to, and has been told, instructed by God, to sacrifice his son Isaac. So he takes him up to a high mountain. He has him put on his back wood and carry the wood on his back and take it up the mountain so that they can make the sacrifice unto God. Isaac understands his role and carries the wood up there. Now, there is no lamb with them, or ram, as it's described. There is no lamb to come up with them. So Abraham tells his son, God will provide the lamb. God will provide the lamb. Because he questions it, like, well, where's the lamb? He doesn't necessarily know that he is the one going to be sacrificed. Now, you can make a whole lot about this and be like, why would he sacrifice his own son? That seems kind of ridiculous. Certainly in 21st century America, the concept of sacrificing your own children seems a little bit ridiculous. In that century, that would not have been that would have been a common normative behavior. It doesn't seem like there's anything out of the norm. But it is his first son. He is having his son in old age. He is given a promise that he would multiply like the stars. So it doesn't all make sense, but it seems, and some of the church fathers will actually write this, they'll say that Abraham's faith, he had great faith. Abraham's faith is going to make him to understand that somehow, some way, his son will rise from the dead. He understood that. And so him taking and sacrificing his son on the altar is um, not going to be an impossibility because he has such a beautiful communion with God and a strong faith and a strong conversation and disposition towards God that really, I mean, we still talk about him to this day. So he takes his son Isaac up the mount on to Mount what's now known as Mount Moriah, or known as Mount Moriah, also known as the Temple Mount. Okay, in the modern understanding, that this area is where there's a big stone there, and he goes to sacrifice his son Isaac on this mountain. Of course, as he's taking the knife, going to sacrifice his son, God prevents him from sacrificing his son Isaac. Now, it is important for me to add this tidbit. Islam teaches that it was Ishmael who was on the Mount Moriah, who was going to be sacrificed by Abraham, his father. Okay? It's very important to the modern understanding of all of this. So, Orthodox Christians and the Jews, all Christians and the Jews, all agree that it was Isaac. Islam says it was Ishmael, just to be abundantly clear. So, God prevents Abraham from killing his son Isaac. Now, the reason for this should be clear to us Christians. It's not clear to Muslims, and it's not clear to Jews. It's clear to us Christians because God is saying to Abraham that I will sacrifice my son, not yours. I just want to make sure that you're willing to sacrifice yours. That's all. But ultimately, God is going to sacrifice his own son, Jesus Christ. And the wood that Isaac carried is the wood of the cross. And Jesus carried wood on his back and went to a very close proximity to Mount Moriah, but not exactly there. And we'll understand why in a little while. But Abraham doesn't sacrifice his son Isaac. Isaac comes down, and God provides instead a ram to be sacrificed. A lamb, okay? That lamb is Jesus Christ, but of course there's a lamb in the bush that is stuck there, and it got stuck. They picked it up. They sacrificed that ram instead, and they came down from the mountain and lived their lives. So Isaac is wonderful. Isaac is going to have 2 sons, and those 2 sons are twins. And one of them is named Esau, and the other one is named Jacob. And these 2 are twins. Esau comes out first. And the story is kind of fascinating between the 2 of them. They're kind of always fighting with one another. Esau is kind of like really stupid, and Jacob is really smart. One of them is like, the jock, and the other one is like the brains, kind of thing. Anyways, Esau and him are always kind of contending to be in first place. And when he is young, when they're young, there's a story about Esau giving up his birthright. His birthright. And that birthright is basically that he gets to inherit everything. He is the firstborn son of Isaac. So he gets to inherit everything. Well, one day he's outside playing and he's hungry and he comes back inside and his brother is eating like porridge, okay, like oatmeal. And he's hungry. So Jacob takes this opportunity to trade him the porridge for his birthright. And Esau's like, what good is my birthright if I die? What good is it if I inherit everything but I die here? You can have it and I'll take the porridge. Which is a very interesting concept for all of us. Because I think a lot of times we trade what material things for our spiritual blessings. And we give up for something that sustains our earthly life. We give up our eternal destiny or destination. And we really need to be careful about being that way. So anyways, Jacob is going to now supplant his brother Esau, and he is going to be known as the supplanter, and he is going to be the one that gets the entirety of the inheritance. And this inheritance, Esau had no idea how big of an inheritance it was. And Jacob is an interesting figure, and he's now going to supplant. He gets a blessing from his father, who's lost his sight, and actually his father is going to bless him and give him the inheritance, incidentally, again, later in the story. So it happens that he gives it away, but it happens that he actually receives it from his father appropriately. So Jacob is going to wrestle with God at some point, and he is going to kind of wrestle with him and win. Kind of win. He kind of like draws. He gets a draw, but he like hurts his hip or something like that. So God renames him Israel. Okay? So Jacob is going to be named Jacob and Israel. And in the Bible that we read today, you're always going to see his name kind of used interchangeably, Jacob, Israel. And everyone will know who you're talking about. It's not uncommon to see the God of Jacob or the God of Israel, okay? It's very common to see both names just kind of thrown in there. Same guy. Now, when you talk about this particular man, you're going to recognize that he is a great lover of a woman named Rachel. Loves her so much, and he has come into contact with a very wealthy man, Rachel's father, named Laban. And Laban is going to trick Israel into working for him for 7 years. And at the end of the 7 years, he will give over his daughter Rachel to be his wife. So he decides to do that. He agrees to the terms. When the 7 years are up and the day of the wedding comes, the bride isn't Rachel, it's Leah. Rachel's sister, the older sister. So he's like, hey, I worked 7 years for Rachel. Why am I getting Leah? And he says, well, it's not right to marry the younger sister before the older sister. So you get Leah. And he goes, that's not what we agreed to. He goes, you can work another 7 years for Rachel. And he says, okay, I'll work another 7 years. And so he can marry Rachel. So anyways, he ends up marrying Leah, having kids by her. Then he has two other women that he has kids by. And then he finally, after another 7 years, so 14 years of work, he finally gets to marry Rachel. And he has 2 sons by her. Now, Rachel's the one he loves. Rachel's the one he works the hardest for. But he has 12 children in total, 2 of which are from Rachel. And those 2 are Joseph and Benjamin. And you can find the list of the 12 tribes of Israel very easily. There's 12 names, 12 tribes, and Joseph and Benjamin are going to be the sons of his favorite wife. Joseph is going to be the oldest, the 11th born son, but the oldest of his favorite wife, okay? Rachel. So he's going to have preference towards him. But he already has 10 other sons. And these 10 other sons are not necessarily like how do you put it? They're not his favorite. They're not his favorite. And they're kind of jerks, in many ways. He is a very prayerful man. He prays a whole lot, like every day he would pray. And he also had an altar. He also dug a well, known as Jacob's well. And again, they're in this region called of Palestine. They're a little bit north now of Jerusalem, in an area called what's now modernly known as Nablus in Palestine. That's kind of where they all reside. And there's a well there, okay, and that well is going to come back into play a few times, but the idea there is how his father ended up finding a wife was at a well, and Jesus is going to meet a woman at a well, and we'll talk about her later. Her name is the Samaritan woman, or Saint Photini, but this is the same geographical well, Jacob's well. Jacob also has a dream. So there's a thing called Jacob's ladder, and he builds an altar there as well. So there's all these different images in the Old Testament that are a prefigurement of the Virgin Mary, because she's going to be the ladder which bridges us from earth to heaven. So he sees this image of this ladder. And then you see this well. The well is where you meet your wife. You meet your wife at the well, and there's an image there in the Old Testament as well. All right. Joseph. So Jacob has a favorite son. His name is Joseph. His brothers don't like him because he's awesome. He's the best of them. And he's the 11th. So he's like the youngest of them, or close to the youngest. And they know that that their dad worked extra for not their mother, right? And that, they were jealous. They didn't like him. He had a special coat that his father gifted him because he's like, the special son. He's the good one. He's the chosen one, so to speak. So one day they're out in the field doing their work, and when they're out there, they notice some traders going down to Egypt. And they conspire together against their brother, Joseph. They conspire against him. And they basically say, we should kill him. And then one of them says, no, no, no. Why don't we beat him up and then sell him into slavery? So they opt to sell him into slavery. Okay? Beat him up, put him in a pit, and then sell him into slavery. And they do it all when these traders, these slave traders, are moving geographically south through the town and going to Egypt. So they pick up, the traders pick up his brother, and they, now that he's like half dead, whatever, they take him down into Egypt to be sold at the market, at the slave market. So this was a terrible crime. He was innocent. He didn't do anything wrong. They go back to their dad and they say, "Look, isn't this your son's coat?" And he goes, "Yeah, that's his." Oh my! And he basically knows that his son is dead. His son is dead. His favorite son is dead, and he loses he just loses it. So he's just so sad for many, many years. Joseph has now been betrayed by his own brothers, sent down into slavery, and there's a reason for that. Joseph had a dream, and this is going to be like a recurring theme with Joseph. He's going to have a dream, and in the dream, he's going to basically see his brothers bowing towards him, including his father and his mother. They're all going to bow towards him. And so for that reason, they're like, "Oh, look, he's going to lord over us. Like, that's ridiculous. Let's just kill him now." That's what gets into their mind. What they don't know is that God has a bigger plan for Joseph. And by putting him in this pit and selling him into slavery, they're actually going to save themselves and others in some way, shape, or form. Joseph is going to go down into Egypt. He's going to be sold into slavery. Well, who's going to buy him? Who's going to buy Joseph into slavery? Who's going to actually purchase him? So he ends up being purchased by someone who's wealthy. That seems pretty obvious. If you're going to be an owner of slaves, you need to be very wealthy. And very wealthy people that are very close to Pharaoh, okay, very close to Pharaoh, are going to purchase Joseph. So, like, think of it like as you have like the president, the vice president, the chief of staff, all those kinds of people, right? In Pharaoh's court that work under Pharaoh. He's going to be like working for someone in that rank. Now, generally speaking, in that area, probably even in our own day, the wife of that guy is going to be pretty beautiful and very tempting. And Joseph is going to be picked up because he speaks multiple languages. He's been working in the fields with his brother, so he's got a very nice physical build, and he's going to be very useful. So he actually was very expensive slave to purchase, and because of that, he ends up in one of the better houses in Egypt, but like a really high-ranking official. And that high-ranking official's wife is gorgeous. She's gorgeous. And Joseph goes and works in this home. He's like an indoor slave, so to speak. He's a very smart slave. He's very handsome. He's very pleasing to the eyes, especially to the wife of this general. And so, I don't know, her husband's out and not in the house doing whatever he's doing. She's kind of lonely, I guess, and she's been eyeing Joseph and wants him to go into her. So she concocts this plan of when he's about to go into the bath. She sends out all of the other slaves out of the house and basically traps Joseph to have relations with her. And he, being a God-fearing man, knowing how to live a good, virtuous life, knows that he cannot go into the wife of his master. Like, that's a terrible idea. So, but she's got him basically naked. He has to make a decision. Do I go into her? Or what do I do? So he runs out of the house naked. She, very quick on her feet, runs out after him and basically accuses him of trying to rape her. So he has to go to prison. That can't be. That can't be. That kind of behavior would be tolerated. Obviously, no one was there to see it. He's a slave. She's the owner. He gets put into prison. But he doesn't just go to any prison. He goes to like a prison where the top officials would go. Because if you're, I don't know, hanging around the president or the vice president or whatever, the chief of staff, and you're in their house, you probably might have some state secrets that can't get out. So they would put you in a special prison with other people that would be in the same kind of predicament, like very high-ranking government officials. And so he ends up in this prison with different people, and he's there for a year or so. And one day, these two men come, and they have these dreams. One was the chief baker, and one was the chief butler of the Pharaoh, in the same prison. They're talking to one another, and they said, "Oh my goodness, I had a dream last night, and in this dream, this is what happened. It really, really was vivid. It was one of those dreams I can't forget." And basically, Joseph tells them that in 3 days, this is what's going to happen to you. And one of them was going to be restored to his role by the Pharaoh. So the other one said, "Hey, that's great news. Can you tell me what about my dream?" And he says, "Well, in 3 days you're gonna die." Like, I think it's very clear. I think it says you're gonna be hung from a tree even in 3 days. So obviously, like, there's something there, but the specificity about the tree and 3 days, so on and so forth. Christ hung on a tree. After 3 days, he rose from the dead. So one of them is restored to life, and one of them is taken into death. And he gets to press the grape into the cup. He's the cup bearer. He gets to press the grape and squeeze the grape juice into the cup of the Pharaoh. That's how he's going to be restored. Okay. So again, you have the blood, you have the imagery there. All right. So this is great. Now, 3 days pass exactly as Joseph says was going to happen happened. And all he asks them is that you remember me. I was put here falsely. I'm innocent, but I was put here in prison under false premises. So remember me when you're restored. Oh yeah, of course, we'll remember you. Remember you. So he gets restored, and the other guy gets killed, and Joseph wallows away in prison, forgotten about for a few more years. So he forgot. So the Pharaoh one night has a dream. And in the dream, he sees it. It's very vivid to him. And he is totally disturbed by it. Completely disturbed. And he wants all the soothsayers and all the magicians, all the people that can interpret dreams to come and tell him what the dream meant. And they all did. But none of them could tell him what the dream was and nor what the dream meant. He was unsatisfied and he was terribly shook inside of his in his core. So, the man that was restored remembers, yeah, there was a man who was in prison with us, and falsely. His name was Joseph. If you go into the prison, you'll find him. He was the one that told us about our dreams, and then it came to pass. And so the Pharaoh said at once, go get him. Bring him out of the prison cell. So now Joseph comes out of prison. And he stands before Pharaoh, and he tells him what the dream was and what the dream meant. And the dream was basically interpreted as there's going to be 7 years of great prosperity. Prosperity that you have never seen in all of the land, like ever, and will never see again. And what is coming in those 7 years, you're just going to be so blessed with so much grain and so much fatness of the calves and so much. It's going to be amazing for all of Egypt. But immediately after those 7 years of plenty, you're going to have 7 years of famine. And it's going to be really, really, really bad. That no one's going to have ever seen this drought, this famine. And they've never seen it and they'll never see it again. Which is something common that could happen in what's called the Nile Delta. So if you look at the calendar, or if you look at the map of Egypt, you kind of go around the Nile. When there's flooding of the Nile River, they tend to have a lot of crops that year. That's probably what happened, that it flooded really, really well, and there was great irrigation for that whole region. And they just had so much grain and so much food for the animals, and the calves were fatted and so on and so forth as a result. And then 7 years of famine comes, and this is going to be life-changing. This is going to be life-changing completely. So Pharaoh believes Joseph and basically sets Joseph to be the guy. He's going to be number 2. He's the right hand of Pharaoh. So he gets pulled from prison and put at the right hand of Pharaoh. He gets to reign, which is just amazing. And so Joseph, because he's a really bright guy, he's taught by his father, he says, what we're going to do is we're going to collect a tax of 20% of all of the grain that's made in the next 7 years. And we're going to store it up. We're going to store it up because for the following 7 years. and we'll get through those 7 years, and we'll be okay. So mathematically, that's how he kind of configures it. So he basically goes and gets all the grain, sets up all these silos and all this stuff in all of Egypt, and he collects all the taxes. And Pharaoh's like, "Yep, that's the way to do it. Let's go. You're the boss. You're in charge of all this," and really saves the Egyptian civilization. Truly saves the Egyptian civilization. And now they are, basically having an abundance when everyone else is having a famine. Remember, his brothers are just north of Egypt. They're in Nablus, hanging out, and not too far from Jerusalem. They're hanging out, and they've had 7 years of plenty themselves, but they weren't saving. They just thought the good times were going to be good times forever. And so what happens is, after 1 year of the famine, so like this is the 8th year since he's out of prison, they're like, "Whoa, we need to do something. This is really bad. I don't know if this famine's ever going to end." So they say to their dad, "Hey, Dad, we heard that they have grain down in Egypt. So we need to go down and get grain and bring it back." And their father says, "Okay, go. But keep my son Benjamin here with me." Because he didn't want to lose Benjamin, because he needs, he can't lose both of his sons from his favorite wife. Can't do that. So they say, "Okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll do that. We'll just leave him here, whatever. And we'll go down to Egypt. We'll go get grain. We'll be back." He said, "Okay, here, give him this, all this stuff. Here's the money, whatever." So they go down to Egypt. And because they're Israelites, sons of Israel, they're not Egyptian. They're looked at, "Hey, who are you?" with great suspicion. Now, Joseph has been amongst the Egyptians for a while, speaks their language fluently. Plus, he was taught it from his dad, but now he speaks it fluently. These brothers don't. They were rugged. They were like Esau, rugged individuals. They didn't care to be intellectual, learn, so on and so forth. So they end up going into Egypt, and they are summoned to speak to Joseph. And so Joseph starts questioning them. "Who are you? What are you doing here? Are you planning to steal from us? What's going on?" And they're like, "No, we are 12 brothers. There's 10 of us here right now. One of us is dead, and the other one is with our father. And our father," he goes, "How's your father? Is he alive?" And he goes, "Oh yeah, he's alive. He's doing this, blah blah blah. He's doing that, great, whatever." And so he pretends like he doesn't know them, and he speaks to them through a translator, even though he knows them. He knows they're his brothers. He pretends like he doesn't know them, and he treats them with hostility. And so they go. He gives them grain enough to cover for the next year, and he says, "If you're going to come back next time, you bring your other brother." And so he knows that the famine's going to go for a few years. They don't know that. He knows that they're going to have to come back for more grain. It's impossible for them not to. So he gives them enough for them to go. They go back. They tell their dad, "Oh my gosh, he was asking us all these questions. It was really difficult. Next time, we have to take our brother, Benjamin, with us. There's no way around it, Dad." He goes, okay. Well, the next time came around much quicker than they all anticipated. And they're like, "Oh, we have to go get grain. They still have grain in Egypt. We need to go back and get some." And he says, you can't take your brother, because he was very specific. "The next time you come back here, you better bring your brother Benjamin with you." So their father relents. He gives him over his son and hopes and blesses him and prays that he comes back whole. So they go back down to Egypt. They're having this whole conversation again with Joseph. They don't know who he is. Still, he knows who they are. Now he sees his brother Benjamin. He kind of weeps over his brother Benjamin privately. And he says, all right, you guys need more grain? They say, yeah, great. We need more grain. Fill up a bag for each of them and send them off with grain. He pulls one of his assistants aside. He says, hey, look, in the bag of the youngest, you need to put a cup in it. And in the cup, it's put a nice, valuable silver cup in the bag, and send it off with them. Don't let them know that it's in there. They say, okay. And then after they leave, you're going to overcome them, and you're going to basically say, why do you repeat evil for good? Okay? Why did you do that? You bring them, you make them all expose the cup, find the cup in the youngest, and you bring him back with you to stay in prison with me because he stole the cup. And they're like, okay, whatever you say. So this is what happens. They go out, they get the bags, they fill the bags, they go on their journey back north. They get overtaken, and when they do that, they discover that in Benjamin's bag is a cup that he stole, unbeknownst to himself and unbeknownst to all of them. So they're like, well, we only have to punish the one who stole the cup. And the other 10 protest. They're like, no, you can't do that. This is like our dad's like favorite son. Like you can't take him. Take me instead. No, it has to be the son. So they all go back down to Joseph, and Joseph basically removes himself from the room and starts weeping. And they're basically asking him for mercy and saying, you know, and he asks them questions, and he questions them, and they're like, you can't take our brother, take my son, I promise, like, you can't take our brother. This isn't even, how is this even happening? Anyways, he reveals himself to be Joseph, the one whom they sold into slavery. He forgave them. Right then and there, he forgave them. And he said to them, you meant this for evil, but God meant this for good. God meant this for good. Which I find to be one of the most powerful lines in Scripture. Because I think what happens in many of our lives is we get betrayed, we get destroyed, we get put in prison, we get all kinds of things that had happened to us. And we can look at the people that got us into this mess in the first place and be angry with them forever. But God has a plan and a purpose for our lives. And even though they meant it for evil, God meant it for good. And because of what happened there, they are all going to continue to live because they can't make it through this 7 years of famine. There's no way. They're not going to make it. So they need to leave the land that was promised to them, to their forefather Abraham, and they need to come down into Egypt and have safety there. They need to live there and all the days of their lives. So they go back, they tell their dad, Joseph's alive, come down. They couldn't believe it, Joseph, get restored. He gets to see his father. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story of reconciliation, renewal. And basically they're going to embrace one another, and they're going to return to live a good and wonderful life in Egypt. And Joseph is going to be second in command. So the Israelites, and I need to make a distinction here. Israelites are the sons of Israel, Jacob, Israel, okay? That guy. There's 12 sons of Israel. One of them is named Judah. And from Judah's line, Jesus will come. Jesus will come from the tribe of Judah, okay? Lion of the tribe of Judah. So the phrase, the term Jew, comes from Judah. It's only one of the 12 sons of Abraham, of Isaac, of Israel, rather. Okay? It's only one of the 12 sons. It's not all 12 of them. These are Israelites. These are sons of Israel. And they are all in Egypt at this particular moment in the story. They're all in Egypt. And they're going to spend 400 years in Egypt. 400 years in Egypt. Okay? So that's a very interesting and long period of time to not be inheritors of the land which was promised to their forefather Abraham, okay, Isaac and Jacob, and who his seed forever. Okay? It's forever is an interesting phrase. Like, we really have to think about it on what that means, because here on the fourth generation, they're already out of the land of Israel, so to speak. They're not there. They're going to be separated from it for 400 years, plus 40. All right, and I'll show you that in a minute when we get there. But they're now in Egypt. They are going to become slaves in the land of Egypt. Okay? Because as the story goes, Joseph dies. He no longer reigns. No Jew rises to the right hand of the Pharaoh. Pharaoh is going to make the Jews a subservient people, and that's what's going to happen to them. They are going to become slaves in Egypt. They're not going to be free. Now, they vaguely remember this idea of their forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, of what the promise of God was for their people. They're just living in bondage. They're just living in slavery for 400 years. And so this bondage, this slavery that they are going to undergo and to live through is a very interesting place and time for them. And at the end of their time there, and that's really the way the scripture speaks of it, it kind of just like skips 400 years of history. At the end of their time there, there's a man named Moses that is going to come up and going to release them from bondage of slavery in the land of Egypt. So that's what's going to happen, and it's a really fascinating idea there, and so we'll get there. Let me just wrap up with Joseph, and then we'll get to Moses. Joseph is a type of Jesus Christ, okay? And if you see him, you see his purity, you see his righteousness, You see that he didn't sin. He was falsely arrested. He was betrayed, okay, by those closest to him. Um, you see Christ in the story of Joseph. You also see his ability to fulfill the prophecy. You see his understanding of the future. You see his death. You see his resurrection. You see his. You see in Joseph him going into prison and then releasing those who are bound, and basically sitting at the right hand. Okay, meaning he is the one who is vested with power and authority. So Jesus is all of those things. This arc, this story, can't be underscored. It's such an important it's such an important lesson for us, and he ends up being buried near his father, um, and and he's really a great saint of the church, a great prophet, saint, and a great type of Christ.